Most people are direct communicators. Where I come from, we are very much direct. Any African will tell you this. We are more direct in how we speak, and our communication style is driven by that directness. It is not seen as being rude, it is not seen as being aggressive, it is just seen as being assertive because you're sharing what you want and you're making it very clear without having to be passive aggressive or try and downplay or sugarcoat whatever information you're conveying to the other person. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm your communication bestie. Happy New Year's. I'm so glad to be here today. I know it's been forever since I graced your presence on this channel, and it's because, well, life has been happening. There's so many wonderful good things that have been going on in the background. Today I am going to be unpacking a topic that I have been ruminating on. I've realized that there is so many things I'm still learning. I have been constantly thinking about if I am a free thinker. And this is more coming from being observant of what has been going on within our society and the current digital world that we find ourselves in, where people are continuously misconstruing what the other person is saying or taking things out of context. Most times it results in people being canceled, being doxxed, people not being able to be allowed to sit within their own ideas that are informed by the backgrounds that they come from. I'm going to be trying to answer the question, are we free thinkers? And by that, I mean, are we thinking because we know what we know, or because the cultures and the backgrounds that we have come from are the ones that are informing the decisions that we make today? What that looks like is the idea of cultural determinism. We're going to break down what cultural determinism is, how it shows up in our lives, and why social media becomes a little bit tricky when it comes to us understanding cultural determinism. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how you can use this awareness to personally become more culturally competent, because that's ultimately what we want. And I promise you that as you continue to think about these concepts and ideas in this video, it's going to help you understand and think about free choice forever. Let's get into it. Cultural determinism is the idea much of what you and I call free thinking is deeply shaped by the cultural norms and values. And yet, true intellectual freedom, however, comes from recognizing those influences and choosing when to align or to challenge them. Because if you've noticed, there's so many people who grow up having this way of life, things that the parents have informed on them. They never choose to evolve out of those principles or teachings if they are contrary to what the world is bringing to them. So in the first section, I'm going to talk about cultural determinism itself. But first, let's define it. Cultural determinism is the idea that our behaviors and decisions are not simply a matter of personal willpower. They are strongly shaped by how the culture that we have grown up in informs that. It's like an operating system quietly running in the background of our lives. And here's the interesting part. Cultural determinism often gets compared to biological determinism. Now, biological determinism says that our genes and biology control our destiny, things like gender or DNA. Cultural determinism, however, says no, it's actually the social rules and expectations around you that drive your behavior, which I feel like makes more sense. Think about it. Why do so many of us believe that we, for example, have to get married at a certain age? Or that working hard means long hours instead of just finding balance? Or that gender roles are fixed even when society keeps changing and evolving? These aren't just like personal choices. They're cultural scripts that you and I have been conditioned to follow and have continued to inherit, often without even realizing it. If you're a leader, a communicator, or just someone who's constantly trying to navigate daily life, this information that I'll be providing matters, because understanding cultural determinism means understanding why people act the way that they do and why miscommunication happens and how you and I can move on from judgment to connection. Section 2. Let's talk about the principles of cultural determinism. Some of the core ideas are culture shapes identity. Our culture influences our perception of what is normal, and our culture sets those limits, but also provides possibilities. An example in education. When it comes to education, in most cultures, it is defined as the epitome of success. That being educated is how you perceived as successful. And that can show up differently in different cultures. Or another example, family expectations, right? In some cultures, taking care of our elders more important than, let's say, being independent and letting other social dynamics be able to take care of our elderly, like putting them in a home, for example. We start with this concept I saw on TikTok that this creator was talking about called cultural fossilization. I thought it was really interesting. The idea that our traditions and values are sometimes constantly frozen in time when we find ourselves part of a new society or new group of people. And this comes mostly with immigrant families, where you move to another country and you are still living by the rules that the society you were living in before you immigrated. But everyone else back home is changing and evolving, and things are not the same as they were when you left. And this is something that I have seen in my life. I've been overseas for over 10 years now, and how I communicate is completely different to how people communicate back home and vice versa. So it's like I'm almost learning a new language of how to embrace the culture that I grew up in, and hopefully how to instill those same values in my future family. Roll the clip.
Is there a word to describe when a diaspora group is frozen in time? So for example, let's say your parents come to the West in the 70s and 80s. They bring the cultural values of their homeland.
There is, and it's called cultural fossilization. But hi, my name is Momobo. I am a social and cultural psychologist, and if you are fascinated by how our cultures shape all our behaviors and social realities, make sure you follow. So cultural or linguistic fossilization is a phenomena that is seen in migration studies, in cultural psychology, and also in sociolinguistics. It's a phenomena in which when a family decides to emigrate from their homeland and move into another country, that they take the language, traditions, and they also take the customs and practices of their home country to the new country. But what they're taking is those practices in that very moment in time. But when it comes to culture, when it comes to language, when it comes to our shared behaviors, it is something that is ever evolving and ever changing. And when you decide to emigrate, or if you do not decide to emigrate, you're forced to emigrate, you are basically doing kind of like a time capsule of the cultural practices, languages, and all the things that you have from your homeland and bringing it to the new country. This phenomena of cultural fossilization brings about, some people call it, I haven't really seen it in literature, but some people call it the cultural time capsule or immigrant time capsule or something like that. And so what happens is that the language that these immigrant groups speak to their children is the language that they knew from the time that they were in that country. So, for example, a family may be speaking Yoruba to their children in Ireland, for example, but they may be speaking the Yoruba of 1995 in which they left Nigeria. But Nigeria has since changed. There's new slang, there's new ways of doing things, there's new ways of speaking Yoruba. The Yoruba people have been changing their ways of doing things. So it's very funny that then when those children actually speak, of course, they speak Yoruba, they speak the language. When those children actually speak that language and then they come back to Nigeria, the people are like, this was sus. This doesn't sound like what we're used to today. The positive effect of this is that certain traditions, certain practices, certain behaviors are actually sort of like kept. They're actually frozen in time due to that process of migration. They're frozen in time, and if that tradition is lost in the home country, those immigrant groups, because they are, again, they fossilized, or they're having a immigrant time capsule effect, they keep those traditions, they keep those practices, which is kind of cool, I think. So if you are an immigrant and your parents keep saying, oh, I want to move back to, I'm just projecting here, I want to move back to our home country, you need to remind them that you might be going back to a completely different place, and they may be seeing it through a rose-tinted glasses or goggles of which the time that they left. They're in a time capsule in their head.
And if you are someone who has immigrated to another country, you definitely understand what that creator was talking about. And when it comes to leadership, as I've seen in my own life, becoming culturally blind always bears the risk of miscommunication. So that's why it's important to understand that cultural competence will always create a connection, because you are respecting and understanding another person's beliefs and culture while simultaneously learning about how you can unpack what you have learned and what you thought was the only way to live while observing other cultures. I had talked about earlier the principles of cultural determinism. Now I want to go into them in length. So some of the principles of cultural determinism I have is cultural influence. And this is when culture is viewed as a primary determinant of our human behavior, which is what you and I have constantly realized, right? And those include the values, beliefs, and practices that shape our societal norms. For example, we perceive that everyone has a place and everyone should be included and feel like they belong. And then there's the techno-ecological determinism. This is the concept that is rooted in cultural materialism, which emphasizes that the role of technological and ecological factors will always shape our cultural practices and social structures. This can be evident when you look at some cultures that believe in the earth providing everything that we need to survive, but also providing the spiritual values that can come from the earth. If you notice, in some cultures, they're more technologically advanced than others. This is where you can see that techno-ecological determinism. And then the last one is interconnectedness with communication. And this is one that is more prevalent in all of our lives, where we have modern interpretations that highlight the dynamics of relationships between culture and communication, where it influences and develops each other. So that's what we see, whether in the workplace, for example, where there are people from all walks of life that are working in the same place. However, how they view leadership, how they view productiveness, how they view success is completely different, because they are coming from their own different cultures that have informed how they will do the job that they're required to do. Everyone will still be producing or providing some value, but it's always going to be informed on a more micro individual level than on a macro level. While cultural determinism continues to provide like a framework for understanding societal behaviors, critics argue that it may overlook individual agency and the complexities of human actions, suggesting that a balance between cultural influences and personal choices is essential for a comprehensive understanding of social dynamics. I absolutely agree with that. Our third section, where we're going to talk about social media and the cultural blind spots that all of us fall into. This section is going to be less condensed, because obviously social media encompasses a wide range of subjects. But what I'm going to zone in on is the cultural barriers or blind spots that you and I can be attuned to. Most social media platforms are, potent and filled with opinions and ideas and all these different kinds of information. But most of that information is informed by the person's culture that they're coming from or their background. When it comes to cultural determinism, it's very hard for people to understand that they are contexts that are informing a person's point of view. And so what platforms do is they flatten those differences and making us think that all of us are the same when we are not. Let's start with individualism, because we have seen that most of what the Western world provides online is what everyone perceives as correct or the important dominant narrative. And that's not always true, because we also have other cultures that are more collective and that are more in tune with understanding where people are coming from before they can choose to grasp on an idea that's coming from the Western world. So an example is the trend where people say normalize this. This trend usually can be like, let's normalize hustle culture versus soft life. Hustle culture is when we have to just continue working, not finding balance, but keep ongoing. And then there are other cultures that are like, actually, no, we do need balance. We do need to rest. We do need to take time out of the day to be in tune with our emotions and how we're feeling on a physical level. So this then sparks debates. Those debates, often lose nuance because then we're all removing ourselves from the cultural context of that person and where they're coming from. And what this results to is misunderstandings, culture wars, diaspora wars, and online shaming, which shouldn't be the case. And in actual fact, I have continuously seen that on my own channel. There is a video I made a couple of months ago on the diaspora wars. Listen, that video continues to do numbers because people are fighting in the comments and not trying to see each other from their own cultural perspectives and lens. And that is sad to see because it's like, take out what you believe to know is true and understand where this person is coming from and how they got there, because primarily it's their culture that has informed the way of thinking that they have. And even if you disagree, you can still be like, oh, okay, I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree with this, but I understand how they got to this kind of thinking, and vice versa. And so some of the other examples of how social media can provide cultural blind spots is gender roles and feminism debates. This is a can of worms, and I'm not even going to delve deep into this because listen, I will stay in my lane. I'm not even going to talk about Twitter because that's where it mostly happens, and I deleted my Twitter 2 years ago now. I have no idea what's going on there, but I know it's a cesspool of these debates, and the conversations on those platforms continuously ignore cultural implications to the things we say or how we see people. For example, there was this post that went viral a couple of months ago where this gentleman went to Japan. I think he was Australian or American, I can't remember. But he went there and he was annoyed at the fact that they had women-only carriages at the metro. He was walking in, filming all the people in there, all the women, and being very disrespectful, airing out his views loudly about why aren't men allowed to be on these modes of transportation. That, already is a no-no because one, you don't understand why that is the case there, and two, you're also a man, you're not even supposed to be there, so why are you even complaining that this is not catering to you when you don't even go there? So what are you doing?
I didn't even go here.
Another side of the coin when it comes to our social media cultural blind spots is cancel culture and calling out threads. Everyone calls them keyboard warriors, people who before they even get to the second of a video, they're already typing in the comments, keyboard warriors, about whatever that person is talking about. 9 out of 10 times what they're commenting has nothing to do with what the person is saying, or they've completely missed the mark. And so what happens is there is a disconnect in trying to understand the other person or meet them halfway. And that's where people start calling each other out, canceling them when there was no reason to, because you just didn't understand where they were coming from. And of course, I'm not trying to downplay other forms of calling out where it is warranted and people do deserve to be called out. Maybe most times all we needed was just a call in to kind of understand where that person is coming from, and then we meet them halfway with the knowledge that we have. We need to find that balance of understanding where the other person is coming from and why they're sharing whatever take that they're sharing. I want you to think about how your online opinions, are they truly yours or they're just shaped by the dominant cultural script? Because that's what I see most of the time, where Western culture can overtake and become more dominant in sharing, views compared to other people that might have just as much valuable ideas to share, but because their cultures are not the dominant one, they're often put on the back burner or seen as less than, which is not good. Section 4, traveling abroad and cultural determinism. Traveling amplifies cultural determinism in action, especially when people expect their own norms to be universal. Because what people fail to prepare for while traveling abroad is what we're going to unpack. We see this mostly within individualistic and collectivism cultures, where in individual cultures, it's okay to eat alone, and there's no problem with that. In collectivism cultures, eating alone might be frowned upon, and therefore group meals are more acceptable. And so let's go to gender roles and communication style, because sometimes Most people are direct communicators like me. Where I come from, we are very much direct. I mean, any African will tell you this. We are more direct in how we speak, and our communication style is driven by that directness. It is not seen as being rude, it is not seen as being aggressive, it is just seen as being assertive because you're sharing what you want and you're making it very clear without having to be passive aggressive or try and kind of, downplay or sugarcoat whatever information you're conveying to the other person. In other cultures, that can be seen as a no-no. And I have seen this for myself when I moved to the US. In the US, people don't take directness very well, especially if you add on the racial element where that directness is coming from a Black person. It is not received well. It is seen as aggressive, rude, when in actual fact, it's just passion and assertiveness and proactiveness. But that is not expected of Black people because of the racial undertones that come with that, which are rooted in microaggression and stereotypes. So that's a whole other can of worms, but that's what we see when people are traveling abroad. When it comes to the time perception, let's say in other cultures where being on time is important and seen as very much acceptable in European cultures, for example. And then when you come to Africa, people are not usually on time. That's why we have this saying throw around called African time, where we will arrive when we arrive. When we get there, that's when we get there. I do not like that. I obviously don't subscribe to it. Even though I am African, it is always our way of just saying, there's no rush. We'll get there when we get there. But then in other cultures, being on time is important and it's seen as a way of showing respect. And not being on time is shown as being disrespectful and frowned upon. So those are kind of some of the differences and key points when understanding traveling and how cultural determinism plays a part. I want to share a video from TikTok of this man called Frank Zani. His videos are always circulating online because he highlights multicultural communication and how that's important when traveling. I think he is a traveler himself. In this one specific video, he's talking to an American and sharing some of the ways that we can understand other cultures by respecting how those cultures do the things they do. Roll the clip.
Until I met the mayor of my town, Hoyashi, in Japan, and I told my mayor, why when I'm going to Japanese restaurants, they tell me away. When I go to the ryokan, they tell me away, and he said, no, they're not racist. We become jittery when we don't know how to interact. It's called xenophobia. You don't want to look stupid. In Japanese, they want to be perfect all the time.
Okay.
If I'm going to serve this man and I make a mistake, my face is down. So rather, avoid it. So he gave me a word to use, which is a greeting that says, I am sorry for being a burden on you. And it changed everything.
So once you said that?
Yes. She knows that.
But I wouldn't want to walk around thinking that I'm a burden.
Well, then stay in your country. Don't go anywhere.
Well, I want to visit. I want to.
There is something called multicultural communication, multicultural understanding, multicultural. We teach it. It's very expensive. You think it's there for nothing? It's there to prepare you to know where you're going and how to make the larger community feel comfortable. Not for them to make you feel comfortable. You buy that comfort.
So because you don't know how to serve me, I need to dumb down.
No. It's not a dumbing down. That's a very American, and I'm basically
saying I'm so sorry that you cannot serve me.
You have come to.
But can you serve me?
No, you've come to disturb a functioning status quo. You, if you are a man of conscience, you know that I am different. I cannot expect the majority to disorganize themselves to accommodate me. I have to find that accommodation, make them feel that I come with knowledge about you.
But don't they know I'm traveling to their country? Don't they know that there are visitors, there's people coming?
Yeah, there are foreign hotels. We call them foreign hotels. Go there, you go in.
To stay at the Marriott?
That's correct. That's why we have the ryokan. Ryokan is traditional Japanese hotels.
Okay.
You take off your shoes and your clothes at the door, standing naked, and a woman will give you what is called yukata, and you wear it. And then you wear sneakers. The whole bamboo floor is polished. You can eat from it. You all, men and women, have to take a shower, sit, and I wash your bag. Western people are not comfortable doing that. So don't come here. And out of curiosity, some of we foreigners want to go there. It has caused problem already. A woman won't behave this way if there hasn't been a precedent to this.
I really like that video. Every time it circulates online, people are always divided. You can tell. Some people are like, I'm paying for a service, therefore it should be like this. And then the other half of people, it's like, well, respect comes first. Even though you're paying, you have to still be respectful of that culture. But I'll let you come to your own conclusion. My actionable tips for you when traveling abroad is to always be observant and not judgmental. It is very important. That's how you are able to understand other cultures. Just observe, learn, and don't judge. And the other thing is ask questions instead of assuming, because we know what happens when you assume. It makes an ass out of you and me. Always ask questions instead of assuming or placing your own stereotype or racial undertone to something that you don't understand. Then the last one is use humility as a bridge. Meet people halfway by you allowing yourself to be humble. What does being humble mean? It means you're willing to be teachable, to tell yourself that, hey, I don't know everything about this culture. I am a guest here. Therefore, all I want to do is learn. But how can I learn? By removing all of my own preconceived notions or takes and realize that I am the one who gets to learn here and benefit from what this culture is providing. So yeah, be observant, not judgmental. Ask questions instead of assuming. And third, always use humility as a bridge. Let's go to our fifth and final section. Is cultural determinism limiting or liberating? Because I know I've shared so much information and it can feel like a lot, which it is, but let's see if this is something that you and I can find liberating, and what are the reasons that cultural determinism can be limiting. Cultural determinism feels like a cage. This is where we see restrictive traditions or gender roles. In some instances, those cultures can be seen as limiting, restrictive in how their traditions flow and their gender roles. Most times when cultural determinism is liberating, it's when it provides meaning and belonging with rituals, language, and identity. That's why you see some people will always say, I'm proud to be from such and such a country because of the rituals that come with being part of that community and that country, language that ties everyone together, and how they view their identity. For example, if someone is like, oh, I'm proud to be, American, for example, people would be like, maybe don't say that out loud. Why? Because currently we know what's happening there. We know what they're showing the world. That cultural determinism cannot be liberating. It's actually limiting because the values have been skewed so many times. What then can you say collectively you're proud of because of what's coming out of there? It's not about escaping your culture. It's about how you can negotiate yourself with it, right? Because there's always going to be bad and good in every culture. But it is important for you to see what you can take and use and let that be your guide, your North Star, and what you can leave behind that may not serve you in whatever new community or culture you find yourself in. And it's always important to develop cultural agility. This is the ability to shift between contexts while staying authentic to yourself. Something that I have done when I lived in South Africa, in England, in the US, and now in Canada. I am continuously culturally agile, allowing myself to shift between contexts of whatever culture is presenting itself and still staying authentic to my African roots and my African upbringing. Now, let's talk about some of the practices that you and I can use when it comes to becoming day-to-day culturally competent, culturally determined people. What does that look like in our day-to-day lives? Because most of this comes from interacting with different cultures while traveling, at work. I guess I can call this a bonus section, how you can practice cultural competence every day. First one is self-audit, your identity script that you're unconsciously following. This means all of us have unconscious biases that we walk around with every single day. I'm not immune. Everyone has cultural biases. And those biases, unfortunately, most of us have unconsciously made them into scripts, things that we will not stray away from. For example, some people will have the unconscious bias that Black people are loud. We're not. We're just passionate, okay? There's that. Always self-audit. Is this script in your head really your identity or you're just following some unconscious bias. Number two, exposure. Expose yourself to things that are not what you've always known. That comes with reading books by authors that are not white. For example, only read authors from people of color, or engage with perspectives or conversations with people outside of your own culture. That is one way you can help yourself become culturally competent. The third one, be curious. That is the simplest way. Be curious. Replace your judgment with curiosity when you're encountering things that are different, like food. Be curious about trying different kinds of food if you're adventurous like that, of course. And then lastly, communication. Adapt your style of communication and context without losing your values. An example would be meeting someone who's non-binary, right? How they would like to be addressed. You have to now adjust your style of communication to accommodate this other person and how they would like to be addressed. It's very important. It's not difficult. You won't be speaking a new language. It is literally just accommodating the other person with the context that you have of who they are, but you can still keep your values. This means that true growth will come from expanding beyond your inherited scripts that come from your mom, your dad, from the culture you grew up in. I want you to think about one choice that is yours. What informs that choice? How do you approach, or how will you approach your life differently now that you know these things? At the end of the day, we all have internalized norms that we have grown with. Always continue to self-audit. I think it's wonderful meeting people from different cultures. It's something that now has become more accessible than 20 years ago. You can meet someone from another country from just a click of a button, where we couldn't do that a couple of years ago. So why not take advantage of that? Why not use that as a way of you learning and becoming better communicator, a better leader, a better anything, than choosing to stay in your blindedness and not wanting to be open-minded. I wouldn't want that for myself. This has been wonderful. I truly enjoyed talking to you about the hidden power of cultural determinism. I hope you are more of a free thinker now that you have watched this, or at least are going to be thinking about how you can become that. Something that I want to leave with you today is understanding and remembering and asking yourself, what is one choice that you thought was yours but was actually informed by your culture, and how are you going to approach it differently? I am excited for what the new year will bring. It is going to be challenging, it's going to be fulfilling, we're going to be triumphant, but most importantly, we will be culturally competent, and that is why I'm excited to continue to do this work with you guys. This channel has been going on for 2 years now, and I have 454 of you here. I am beyond flawed at how many people tune in here every time I post a video. But most importantly, what I love about my channel is the consistent ways people choose to comment and discuss, have open dialogue. You don't see that on a lot of platforms, to be quite honest, because people are always fighting, people are always, using whataboutisms, and no one really ends up learning anything. Here on my channel, what I've appreciated is people are willing to learn with me in real time, whatever concepts or ideas I share. And that I do not take lightly. I am so grateful. Thank you all 454 of you for being here. I hope that there's going to be more fun ways we can learn together in the new year. And if you have any topics that you would like me to cover, please say them in the comments. I wish you all a wonderful new year. I hope we are all blessed in one way or the other, and I hope we get to be better communicators and even more so culturally competent. I love you guys. Bye.